Hello, everybody, and greetings from Paris. You're very welcome today to the launch of Energy Efficiency 2021, our flagship energy efficiency market report produced by the IEA every year. My name is Brian Motherway, Head of Energy Efficiency here at the IEA, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's event. To open today's event, I'm very pleased to welcome the Director of Energy Markets and Security here at the IEA, Keisuke Sadamori. Keisuke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brian. And I would like to welcome you all to the launch of Energy Efficiency 2021, the IEA's annual assessment of market and policy trends in energy efficiency globally. Each year, this report provides the latest analysis on global market and policy trends for energy efficiency, tracking how it is helping to reduce emissions, support economic development, and enhance energy security. This year's report comes in the wake of COP26 and the Glasgow Climate Pact, which was agreed just last weekend. We are pleased to see that for the first time, the agreement text explicitly calls for energy efficiency measures to be rapidly scaled up. It is encouraging to see the international community acknowledge the central role that the efficiency plays in meeting climate targets. While positive progress was made at Glasgow, and the recent announcement of higher climate ambitions are to be welcomed, the IEA has emphasized that governments now need to translate ambition into action. We are still not seeing sustained emission reductions. IEA data shows that global energy-related CO2 emissions are growing and are currently on track for the second largest ever annual increase in absolute terms. This is why understanding the state of play in efficiency and how it can be accelerated is necessary and urgent. The Energy Efficiency 2021 is the first full market update since the announcement of a number of recent government spending commitments aiming to support the economic recovery. The IEA's Sustainable Recovery Tracker demonstrates the importance of clean energy investment in economic recovery, with a strong focus on job creation, as well as locking in efficient, low-carbon stock and infrastructure. However, to date, the total commitments to clean energy measures are low and is mostly concentrated within a handful of economies. On the other hand, we see that there is a strong focus on energy efficiency within these funding commitments, reflecting its particularly strong job creational potential. So we know that using our energy resources more efficiently and more intelligently will help drive emissions down and also support a sustainable recovery. In fact, without a strong push on energy efficiency, net zero pathways will be harder and more expensive to achieve. The task for governments now is to strengthen and renew their efficiency efforts across all sectors. Today's report and all of the IEA's analysis serves to support them in their efforts, providing data and insights to governments, industries, and consumers. This report is the latest example of our ongoing work to support clean energy transitions worldwide, and we hope that the governments, decision makers, and the wider global community find it valuable. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Keisuke, and thank you for those opening words. We're very grateful. So, colleagues, we're now going to let you hear from some of the key findings of today's report, brought to you by some of the lead authors. First of all, a quick word on logistics. First of all, the report is now available for free to download at the IEA website, www.iea.org. You're very welcome to access all of the resources there. Equally, during this morning's event, we're very keen to hear from you, and you're very welcome to ask us any questions as you listen to our speakers or as you peruse the report online. So anybody joining us on the live stream is welcome to submit a question via email at energy.efficiency@iea.org, or you can find me directly on Twitter at Brian or Motherway. And we're very keen to hear your questions. We'll get to as many of those as we can during the Q&A session. But now I'd like to turn to the lead author of this year's Energy Efficiency 2021 report, Dr. Nicholas Howarth. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brian, and good morning, everybody. In this year's Energy Efficiency Market Report, we focus on three main themes: where we are now in terms of recent trends across a range of energy efficiency indicators and policies. The second theme is net zero, and we provide a special focus on the IEA's landmark net zero by 2050 roadmap released earlier this year, and the key energy efficiency milestones therein. The third theme is a look at the game-changing potential of digital energy efficiency markets and how they are already beginning to expand what is possible through energy efficiency. In today's overview, I'll only be providing some of the highlights, and I invite you to view the report, which has been made available for free for download online. Our first message is that energy efficiency progress, as measured by the improvement in the energy intensity of the global economy, recovered in 2021 to its 10-year average of around 1.9%. 2020 was one of the worst years ever for intensity improvement, as the balance of economic activity shifted away from less energy-intensive services such as hospitality and tourism, and technical and efficiency enhancements slowed. While it is good to see intensity trends get back on track this year, there is still some way to go to align with climate targets. With the rate of improvement needing to double over the next 10 years on average to be consistent with the 4.2 annual improvement that would align with the IEA's net zero by 2050 scenario. 2021 also saw investment in energy efficiency rise by 10% to almost $300 billion due to government recovery spending and broader economic recovery. Of particular note, over the last 2 years, the energy efficiency of buildings reached record levels, rising by 20% compared with 2019. This includes spending on appliances as well as new buildings and building retrofits. This growth was centered in Europe, where governments have scaled up existing energy efficiency programs to strong effect. However, to be consistent with the IEA net zero by 2050 scenario, this level of overall investment will need to triple by 2030. What is particularly noteworthy is the prominent role that energy efficiency is playing in government clean energy and sustainable recovery spending. Over the next 3 years of announced spending plans, energy efficiency makes up around 2/3 of total annual spending, around 260 billion out of the total of 400 billion that has been tracked by the IEA Sustainable Recovery Tracker. However, this spending is regionally unbalanced and concentrated in regions and countries such as the European Union, the United States, Japan, Korea, Canada, and Australia. There is still much more potential to scale up efficiency investments, including by strengthening energy efficiency requirements in industrial modernization and new housing plans. One of the reasons why energy efficiency features so prominently in sustainable recovery plans is that it's one of the best clean energy measures for quickly scaling up local long-term employment. Scaling up energy efficiency to the levels in the IEA net zero by 2050 scenario would add an extra 4 million jobs to the economy by 2030, with most of these jobs in the construction and manufacturing sectors. Efficiency investment is also popular as it provides other important social benefits, including lowering energy bills, improving comfort and quality of housing, as well as helping modernize and lift the competitiveness of industry. Another area we would like to highlight is the critical role of appliance standards, where we have gathered new and detailed analysis on program effectiveness. Over 120 countries now have implemented or are developing mandatory standards and label programs. This is over double the number that had such programs only a decade ago. For the longest running programs, energy efficiency has helped reduce the energy consumption of the average appliance in use by over 50%. What's equally impressive is that these savings have been delivered at the same time as the average cost of many appliances fell, on average by between 2 to 3% per year, as manufacturers innovated to meet new requirements. Therefore, where energy efficiency policies are well designed, they can help save consumers money, both on the price of appliances as well as on their running costs. Now let me switch to the second theme in our report, looking at the IEA's Net Zero by 2050 roadmap. Energy efficiency plays a vital role in the IEA's Net Zero by 2050 scenario, with over 40 milestones identified. The important point to note is that energy efficiency milestones are front-loaded into the period through to 2030, as most of them are highly cost-effective and can be deployed using existing technologies that are available on the market today. Early action on energy efficiency is crucial to achieving net zero faster, smoother, and at lower cost. In the net zero by 2050 scenario, implementation of these milestones allows the global economy to grow 40% while using 7% less energy than it does today by 2030. These early energy savings are focused in the buildings and transport sectors, where energy consumption falls by 20% and 3% respectively by 2030. Industrial energy consumption rises by 8%, taking into account the expansion of steel, cement, and chemical output, so vital to support economic development in many countries. Altogether, these milestones and associated energy demand savings help lift the annual rate of improvement in energy intensity to just over 4% on average over the decade to 2030, an overall fall of 35% in the energy intensity of the global economy compared with 2020 levels. The third theme of the market report is on the role of digitalization and how it is taking energy efficiency to higher levels. I'd now like to hand over to my colleague, Vida Rosit, who will speak to this part of the report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. This year's report covers a range of interesting market developments in the area of digitalization and energy efficiency. Digitalization is rapidly transforming many aspects of our lives today. It can also transform how we use energy by providing us with better insights and understanding and increased control over our energy demand. For instance, through smart thermostats that can adjust to how hot or cold we need rooms to be to feel comfortable, through sensors that can detect occupancy of rooms and reduce energy waste by turning things off that are not needed, apps that can suggest the most efficient travel routes, or whole building management systems that continuously collect data, optimize lighting, ventilation, heating, cooling, and other services to meet needs as efficiently as possible. This year, the stock of connected devices that can be used for enhanced control and automation surpassed the number of people on the planet and is expected to reach 9 billion by the end of the year. So now we have an emerging digital infrastructure that can be used to accelerate energy efficiency implementation and to expand the scope of energy efficiency beyond end users towards wider systems. We've conducted an extensive mapping of energy efficiency potentials that can be enabled by digitalization, covering a range of different technologies such as smart devices in homes, energy monitoring and management systems, and technologies for industrial energy use optimization. There are variations in the achieved savings. As we see here, the darker areas indicate a higher likelihood of savings in a given range. Implementation to date of digital technologies for efficiency indicate significant savings potentials, with energy reductions in the range of 20 to 30 being entirely feasible across many end uses. However, the bulk of potential still remains to be tapped. For instance, within the lighting sector, in the case of smart street lighting, we see reductions in the region of 40 to 80% compared to conventional lighting. However, as of today, deployment is still in nascent stages with around 10 million smart street lights deployed globally, which means that there is an untapped potential to make more than 300 million smart street light poles smarter and efficient. Beyond end use level savings, digitalization can also enable the shifting of demand to support efficient power system operation, which is extremely important for system stability and resilience as we continue along a trajectory of decarbonization and electrification. Digitalization is also creating new business opportunities, opening up for new services and expanding energy efficiency markets. One of the most interesting indicators of digital efficiency innovation is the fast-growing growth rate of startups and early stage venture capital investments. Digital efficiency startups now compose almost 2/3 of all energy startups. We're also seeing substantial increase in the flow of venture capital, with early stage venture capital investments in digital and energy efficiency startups totaling $900 million in 2020, up by 20% from the year before. Our analysis indicates that investments will come at a similar or higher level this year. Furthermore, we're also seeing significant investments in energy efficiency and demand flexibility from large information technology companies, energy utilities, and even oil companies. So while trends in this area are positive and promising, there is a need for policy action to create enabling environments to stimulate further market uptake of digital energy efficiency solutions. There's also a need for action to counteract challenges such as interoperability, equitable access, data protection, as well as to take measures to ensure cyber resilience across devices and systems. While digitalization can help us overcome the persistent energy efficiency barriers that we've been tackling for decades, it can create new services and new opportunities, thereby accelerating and reducing the costs for implementation. It is crucial to maintain a focus on people and secure equitable access to these new services and opportunities, including provision of capacity building and training for skills that fit new job opportunities. It's now my pleasure to hand over to Brian Motherway for some concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vida, and thanks to Vida and Nick for outlining this year's key messages, and thanks to both of you, plus Dr. Kevin Lane and many other colleagues on the team who led the work that led up to this report. Friends, we in the IEA, as you know, call energy efficiency the very first fuel. We highlight its absolute central importance in energy policy, and of course now even more crucially as we chart our paths towards net zero and try to accelerate action around the world to match the ambition we're seeing stated, that to be frank, we're not yet seeing in policy action and investment trends. Here in 2021, we're seeing some green shoots. After a perturbed year in 2020, we're certainly seeing an uptick in energy efficiency progress globally. We see primary energy intensity gains returning to the decade average, but we also saw very clearly, as Nick told us, that that's really just half the annual progress rate we could and should be achieving, particularly if we want to return to a net zero pathway. I I think the particular role of energy efficiency in net zero is very clear to us from this year's analysis. As we look at the important work that our colleagues in the IEA have done to really show the range of measures and actions required to get us on the net zero pathway. As Keske Sedamori said at the start, all net zero pathways are much harder and much more expensive if they're not led with energy efficiency. And that's why it's prioritization in the early years, and particularly in this decade, in the approximately 420 weeks available to us between now and 2030 are really crucial. I think as well, the theme that Vida closed on, that of people, is a really important one here when we think about people's experience of clean energy transitions. And we know a lot of change is coming. We will be asking people to change their lifestyles, to accept new policies, new taxes, new ways of living. I think we're reminded with the evidence we're publishing today that energy efficiency brings early term benefits in terms of job creation, more comfortable homes, lower levels of urban air pollution, and many other benefits that are both immediate and tangible to citizens around the world, where we can help people have greater levels of energy access, more affordable access to the good things that appliances bring, to more comfortable, more affordable homes. And that's why we see a real focus on energy efficiency as very important to us all. So colleagues, we'd love to hear your questions now. Just a reminder that you can send us questions either by email to energy.efficiency@iea.org, or you can find me on Twitter at Brian R. Motherway. And thank you for those of you that have already sent in some questions, which I'm now going to pitch to my colleagues here as they come in. So please do send us your questions. Nick, an interesting question for you, if I may start with, because you mentioned the importance of early action on energy efficiency. So the question here is, what are some of the key areas of action that you would see as top priorities for governments right now?
Thank you very much for the question. The net zero by 2050 scenario, as I said and mentioned, involves over 40 detailed energy efficiency milestones, front-loaded to 2030 across the buildings, transport, and industrial sectors. Now, you can get the full detail on what these are in the report, but some highlights include increasing the share of existing buildings that are zero carbon ready. That is, that they're highly efficient and either use renewable energy directly or an energy supply that can be fully decarbonized by 2050. For transport, increasing fuel efficiency standards for all vehicle types is crucial, because even in the net zero by 2050 scenario, around 80% of all cars on the road in 2030 will still be using internal combustion engines. So combined with the phase out of new sales by 2035, these are key measures within the transport sector. For industry, recycling and energy efficiency go hand in hand and can help moderate the energy needed to produce industrial commodities such as steel, cement, chemicals. And for example, increasing the share of scrap in steel manufacture is a key measure that we look at in detail in the report. For example, the use of more efficient electric arc furnaces with scrap requires 70 to 80% less energy than using conventional production methods. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nick. Very interesting. Abida, a question here for you, which actually is one that comes up quite often, which is, let's say, the pros and cons of digitalization, particularly the energy demand relating to data centers, connected devices. So is there a danger that the benefits you've spoken about in terms of digitalization and energy efficiency might in fact be outweighed by the energy demand associated with the technologies?
Thank you, Brian. That's a very important question. And it's definitely an area that we need to continuously watch and be aware of. What we see over recent years is that despite massive deployment of digital technologies, huge increases of data volumes and data flows, huge increases in the processing needs for data, we've seen a relatively stable level of energy demand from these devices, because of the significant energy efficiency improvements that have been made, both in terms of data centers, in processing power, in networks themselves, as well as improvements in the efficiency of connected devices. And that said, so the risk that these will outweigh the benefits, definitely not. As we saw from our analysis, the benefits are very significant and continuously growing as technologies and new business models emerge. However, there is a need for policymakers to be aware of a potential growth in demand and take measures to counteract this. Thank you.
Thanks, Vida. And a related tension we sometimes hear discussed in digitalization is consumer receptivity. So I'm one of those people who loves the latest app on my phone to control my lights or whatever else. But some people sometimes feel that this technology can be perceived as intrusive. They wonder about how their data is handled. So what are your views on how consumers will receive these new opportunities created by these technologies?
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Brian. That's yet another challenging and important question. So in terms of fear and resistance to technologies, absolutely, that is an issue, and those are very valid concerns that do need to be taken into consideration when considering measures and policies to boost deployment and develop new solutions. Privacy is an extremely important issue, and governments across the world are looking into how to create strong data protection and management frameworks. In terms of the willingness of consumers to take up new technologies, I think we were seeing a growing level of comfort with a range of digital technologies, which will also, as time goes, translate to the energy efficiency arena. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vida. Nick, there's a couple of questions here that are related to each other, so I'm going to pitch you them both, if you don't mind. First of all, a question here from Mervyn Pilley. Thank you for the question, which is, what is your view on the scope for behavior change activity to support technology to maximize energy efficiency? And the second one within that category, I think, from Daniel Sharp, who asks about the question of speed limits. What's your view on the role of road speed limits for cars, both in the context of reducing emissions from conventional internal combustion engine cars, but also as we move towards electric vehicles?
Thank you again for the questions, very pertinent. And as you'll see in the report, we detail that some of the three pillars of energy reductions for avoided demand that come in the scenario through efficiency, yes, electrification, yes, but also behavior change, which is a crucial element of lowering energy intensity and lifting overall efficiency at the system level. So behavior change is one of the key factors that we examine some of these milestones. They include revised speed limits to slow down on highways, but also one of the interesting areas in this area was a recent study that came through in the United States that found that 22 billion liters is wasted annually by heavy and light duty vehicles through unnecessary idling. So this is stationary vehicles with their engines on, not going anywhere. And addressing this through behavior change, and there are now in many countries around the world active public awareness campaigns and other more stringent measures that are being put in place to target it. But in the US, around 30 million tons of CO2 could be avoided annually through reducing this unnecessary idling, which is equivalent to removing around 5 million cars from the road. So it's a very significant and multi-dimensional issue. The behavior change also involves issues like modal shift to reduce the passenger kilometers traveled. And this is something that's also somewhat different, whether we're looking at advanced economies or the emerging and developing world as well, where we see a lot of growing demand for transport services. So it has to be very contextualized according to the local conditions that we see, but behavior change is a key element of what will be required to reduce carbon emissions and achieve these net zero milestones. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. And while I have you, an interesting question here on Twitter from Peter Sweetman of Climate Strategy Partners about the role of financial institutions, where Peter is talking about the funding of retrofit in particular in Europe and the role of maybe mortgage portfolio standards, other type solutions. So what do you see as the role of financial institutions in the energy efficiency agenda?
Sure, and thank you, Peter, for the question. This is one of the, I think, key areas that can drive a lot of the energy efficiency progress, particularly in the building sector. And we do see that the work of groups like the Energy Efficiency Financial and Institutions Working Group is putting a focus on this area. And how do we put in place these types of regulations and controls that allow banks to create green portfolios of mortgages, and so that they both provide discounted interest rates perhaps to homeowners to install energy efficiency appliances or retrofits, and recognize that especially in their portfolios, because we know that there is huge demand for green bonds, green financing, as financial institutions around the world are getting on board with net zero aspirations. So one of the interesting things that we look at in the report, and you can read about it in more detail, is this green mortgage standard that can be brought in to bring about some of these changes.
Thanks, Nick. Peter, back to you, if I may. Another interesting question coming in here on Twitter from Han Le, and thank you very much for the question, which is just saying that you spoke quite a lot about devices and connected appliances and things like that, but what about artificial intelligence and particularly the role of AI in optimizing energy efficiency in buildings, for example?
Thanks for the question. Absolutely, machine-to-machine learning, advanced analytics, and even artificial intelligence can play an important role in the development of new solutions. And especially if we look towards systems becoming increasingly connected, increasingly complex, there is a need for new approaches to be able to tackle large quantities of data, analyze this, and provide the insights and decision-making that is needed to optimize energy efficiency. That said, when it comes to these new technologies, prudence is always necessary, and especially to ensure that data is safeguarded, that people are at the center, and that frameworks are in place to ensure that these developments are in support of both energy efficiency and systems optimization, but also in support of making people feel more comfortable and feeling secure. Thank you.
Thanks, Vida. And there's a question that came in by email, energy.efficiency@iea.org from Ardian. Thank you for the question. And they say they saw a mention of blockchain in the report. So they'd like to ask you your thoughts on the role of blockchain technology in digital energy markets or in energy efficiency more broadly.
Thank you, Brian. Absolutely, blockchain can play a very important role in enabling the development of new markets, of new systems. Projects are underway new business models using blockchain are being developed and launched almost on a daily basis. Definitely a very promising area of technology.
Thanks, Vida. Nick, Mark Darris asked two questions, which I'm going to put to you together because they both relate to the thinking about energy efficiency in the wider sense. We talk about the energy use of a building, of a car or an appliance, but what about structural change? For instance, if we organize our cities different to reduce transport needs, or what about if we think about appliances, not just in their energy use, but in their manufacture, their reuse, their recycling, etc. So what about that wider way of thinking about energy efficiency?
Thank you again. Very good question and an important part. One way of looking at efficiency in this broader sense is through the concept of circularity and circular economy. Clearly, boosting recycling is a key element of material efficiency. And so when we moving from a linear approach where we buy products and we throw them away, they go to landfill or end up in the ocean, to be put in place the systems that incentivize, reward that recycling and create a circular loop between companies, the consumer, and then back to the companies again, offers the chance to both upgrade appliances through regular replacement programs, which is really key because efficiency is moving, improving, innovating all the time. And an appliance that you bought 5, 10 years ago is much, much less efficient than the latest technology. So, but at the same time, the steel, the plastics, the components, all the elements that go into that use energy to create. And so closing that loop is a really important piece of governance that major appliance makers will need to look at if we're going to move to a much more circular approach. And how we organize our cities, of course, can make that easier and make those behavior changes smoother and less difficult in terms of whether they're adapting our existing infrastructures or in many other countries that are growing, building new cities, building new green, smart cities that we see in many parts of the world. And we cover a few examples in the world, which make these cities much easier.
Thank you very much, Nick. So there's a couple of questions here on energy service companies and energy service model desks, as we call them. And I'm going to give the first one to you, Nick, and the second one to you, Vida, if I may. So the first one, Nick, is just to tell us what are the key findings in the market report this year on ESCOs. How are we seeing ESCO trends doing around the world?
Thanks. It was a difficult year for a lot of reasons in 2020 and 2021 for businesses, and ESCOs were no exception. And despite a lot of positive momentum on investment in energy efficiency, in many parts of the world, the ESCO market was either flat or declining. The one area which was a real growth highlight that we point to is the ESCO market in China, where activity rose by 12% despite the pandemic. Now, this was really driven by tax incentives that were brought in by the Chinese government that helped incentivize and drive that. And of course, in China, also navigating the COVID crisis in the way that they've done has allowed a lot of activity to rebound much faster than in other parts of the world. So overall, ESCO activity improved in 2021, but it was very much a China story.
Thanks, Nick. And Vida, we have a second question on the same topic, just picking up from that, and we're seeing that there's growth in ESCOs in China, not necessarily in elsewhere. So Rüdiger Lösse from Germany asked a question in relation to what would you see as the key policy responses if we wanted to help the energy services sector grow?
Thank you very much, Brian. Before answering that question, just to highlight that also digitalization can play a fundamental role in transforming how energy services are able to work. One of the challenges with the energy service market is that it is difficult to verify savings. It is that there are risks on both sides of the partnership, and digitalization can provide real-time data on actual savings that can then be utilized to minimize risks and to improve verification and monitoring. In terms of what governments can do, as Nick already mentioned, tax incentives have proven to be effective. Guarantees can also help. In some cases, it's a case of enabling the public sector to be able to engage in energy service contracts. Furthermore, helping to provide access to different forms of financing, such as equity financing, can also help boost the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Vida. And colleagues, thank you for the many interesting questions. We're actually running almost out of time, but I've just two interesting questions that I'm going to bundle together and ask both of our lead authors here to address together, because they're kind of related and they're both also the big questions for energy efficiency. So Nick, I'll turn to you first. And first of all, an interesting question from Toby Morgan, who says that energy efficiency sometimes, is maybe not fully understood. Its benefits are not fully understood. So how can we raise awareness, given that the report has really set out the huge role that energy efficiency plays in net zero? How can we make more people, and particularly policymakers, aware of that? And secondly, a question from a policymaker, Robert Newage, who wants to ask you, what is the single most important thing that government should do to further promote energy efficiency? So I'll give you both, if you could give me brief answers on those two questions. How do we raise awareness of the benefits of energy efficiency, and what is the single most important thing that government should do to promote energy efficiency? Nick.
Thank you for the questions. I think at the IEA we've always called energy efficiency the first fuel, and part of one of the things we observed in this year's market report is that 2/3 of total clean energy and recovery spending that's been brought in since the crisis, as a response to the crisis, to support jobs, to help with decarbonization, has been allocated towards energy efficiency. So this gives me some reassurance that this message of energy efficiency as the first fuel to drive, to support jobs, is getting through. And of course, there's still a lot more that can be done in many parts of the world. But one of the best ways of example is leading by success. And we're getting more and more examples of how these programs are delivering real impacts. And if there is one area that I would like to highlight, which is a major focus of this year's report, is the crucial role of appliance standards. There are massive gains that can be made from cost-effective measures to bring in new appliances that are more efficient. They save consumers money. They bring major system benefits. And there's an international program, the Super Efficient Appliance Deployment Initiative, which was launched at COP under the UK presidency, and more countries getting involved and scaling up their appliance ambition would be my #1 pick for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. So Vida, Nick is optimistic that we're on the right track. So what do you think? How do we raise awareness of the importance and benefits of energy efficiency, and what's the first single most important thing governments could do?
Thanks, Brian. So the lack of visibility of energy efficiency has also always been a challenge. Digitalization, coming from my side of things, can help make energy efficiency more visual, provide people with information and insights on their energy use and tools to be able to control them. Ultimately, energy efficiency does need to be linked to things that people care about. It's climate change, it's reducing your energy bills, it's increased comfort, it's trying to abate those annoying blackouts that are causing problems for your businesses. So definitely a communication challenge, but we're seeing more and more tools and more opportunities to build a compelling business case for energy efficiency. In terms of ambition levels, I'll be the glass half empty to Nick's glass half full. I think we need much more and much quicker. What can governments do? Set out very strong ambition, set out short, medium, long-term targets, and back this all up by a strong, diverse policy portfolio covering all sectors and utilizing all the policy tools that are available, while at the same time looking at innovative opportunities. Now is the time to really, for all stops to come out for energy efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Vida. And so thank you very much, Vida and Nick, for taking all those questions and for setting out the findings of this year's Energy Efficiency Market Report. And thanks to all of you for joining us online. We've had a very interesting discussion. Thanks for your many questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to quite all of them, but we do want to stay in touch. So please download the report from iea.org. Tell us what you think. Get in touch in terms of your perspectives, your experience with energy efficiency, but also your questions in terms of what you think IEA can do to help further this discussion, help decision makers make the right decisions. We look forward to continuing to work with you all and staying in touch with you all. So thank you very much for joining us today. Goodbye.